everyone, and welcome back to the Owl Pod, the official podcast of Temple Athletics. I'm your host, Kevin Copp, and my guest today is Temple men's and women's tennis head coach, Jeff Brandis. Coach Brandis is in his second season here at Temple, overseeing both our men's and women's programs as Temple's director of tennis. Previously, he spent the last decade in the same role at FDU, and prior to that, he coached Drew University, where he was named Landmark Conference Coach of the Year in 2010 and 2011, and the ITA Northeast Coach of the Year in 2011. Just this past week, Coach Brandis was named the USTA's Philadelphia Area Tennis District College Coach of the Year. Men's and women's program opened their home schedule yesterday against Norfolk State, and action will continue throughout the spring. So a great time to catch up with second-year head coach Jeff Brandis. Here is Coach Brandis after this quick word from our Alpod sponsors.
From Westchester to Doylestown, from Drexel Hill to Lansdale to Philly, we all look out for each other, stepping up to keep our communities going strong. And at Independence Blue Cross, we're here to keep you going strong. We've been deeply rooted in our communities for more than 85 years, and that connection to members has earned us our spot as the #1 health insurer in the region. So while you look out for your neighbors, know IBX is always looking out for you. Learn more at IBX.com.
Let's start, from what I've been able to deduce, none of your bios that I can find online go back before college at Rhode Island, but I'm assuming given your northeastern base is home and growing up somewhere in the New England area?
Yeah, New Jersey. I grew up in a town called Cranford, so it's kind of like central Jersey, like half hour from Newark Airport.
So at what age growing up do you pick up tennis? Are you kind of involved in just, kind of all sports at a young age? Where does tennis kind of come into the picture first for you?
Yeah, so tennis was not my favorite sport when I was younger. I actually didn't love it. I was forced into a clinic when I was like 7 with like 50 other kids on like 3 courts, and you waited like 20 minutes to hit a ball. And I was lefty, so I kept smacking the racket of the kid next to me. It wasn't a great experience, honestly. And I just played all sports. Like my parents put me in stuff to try things out, like Little League basketball. But I was a swimmer first and foremost and then I got allergic to chlorine when I was like 12. And so the summer swim club I was a member at, you basically either were on the swim team or the tennis team. And so when I couldn't swim anymore, it was like, all right, well, now you're going to go play tennis. And then I was older, and it was a better situation. Like I didn't have to wait 20 minutes to hit a ball. So, and then I liked it.
Was there, did you have kind of an aptitude and obviously liking it is a big part of it at that age, but, I'm sure at some point, you get some feedback that, hey, this is also something I'm good at, something I excel at. Was it pretty quickly from that point where you switched over from swimming to tennis that you picked it up and developed some skill, or was it just, kind of a matter of enjoying it?
It kind of both. Like I got pretty good pretty fast. Like there was a team there and not everyone got to play. And so when I first came over from swim team, they were, like go on that last court and, let's see what you can do kind of thing. And I kept getting better. By the 3rd week, I was like in the lineup. I was traveling to play the other clubs. And then I just kind of kept getting better from there,
Just back to the swimming thing really quick. Was there, when you're that age, and I'm sure you've got your, that's your social group and your team and you're swimming and you're doing all that. Was that a tough adjustment for you just to have that kind of taken away from you? It sounds like, fairly cut and dry. There's nothing you can do, if you've developed a chlorine allergy, but to have that taken away from you at that age, I imagine, was that a little tough for you, that adjustment?
Yeah, it was difficult. And that was one of the things maybe that motivated me to get better at tennis, because like if I didn't get better, like I wouldn't get to play, like I wouldn't really be accepted into that group. Like honestly, the first 2 weeks, like no one talked to me. I was a swim kid, like it was kind of cliquish.
Like the Jets and the Sharks here.
Kind of like, yeah, it was like when you swam, you sat in a certain part of this swim club. When you played tennis, you were in a different part. It wasn't like that they were rivals, but the groups really didn't have anything to do with each other because they were at the same time. And so like all those tennis kids were together from when they were like 7, 8, 9. Like that's the age that you kind of picked your sport at this place. And so like, yeah, if I didn't get better, like I'd probably not have friends there.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty huge motivator at that age. Yeah, it's almost like going to a different school or something. You're just like starting from scratch and having to make those inroads. And sports is, for better and worse, it's an easy kind of shorthand to develop, those kind of relationships. I'm sure, as you know.
Yeah, totally. That's a good example because like once this swim club opened, like we were there every single day, 7 days a week. And so it was like I had summer friends, which wasn't easy because I had my school friends and I kind of like wanted to hang with them and do what they were doing. I didn't want to go to the swim club every day. Um, so yeah, it was kind of like that going to a new school.
Well, now at what point, as you progressed, did you play? Did you play at Rhode Island? Did you go there as a student? So tell me about just kind of at the when college enters the picture. Obviously, you're having some success at the youth circuit. Kind of how you looked at NCAA and playing tennis in college as a path for you.
Sure. So, like you and I had a pretty good team at the time. Like I mean, the coach knew about me, but it's not like I was just like heavily recruited kid. Had a tryout, basically walk on. I was very fortunate that on one of the days I got there early, and so the coach was like, "All right, let's hit, then let's play him up, serve him up." And I didn't realize it at the time, but that was basically my tryout. Like he was a pretty good player. He was ranked in the New England section of the USTA, and I played well and I kind of killed him, to be honest. Like my game matched up well. Like I was lefty, I had a good serve. He was like short, he had a one-handed backhand. Like it was like not that difficult. Um, and I was a freshman and he was somewhat impressed. And he cut a lot of people. Like there were probably like either easily like another dozen freshmen that didn't like make it basically. And so that's kind of how, I mean, I didn't start my freshman year, but then I just kept getting better and better. So by the time I was a senior, I was playing second singles and first doubles, and it was good.
What was that experience like? Because obviously, college tennis is something of an anomaly in the sport because you do have the team aspect and the team culture to what is fundamentally an individual sport. And I won't profess to know enough about the kind of the club scene and juniors and coming up through that circuit, but having been around college tennis and seeing that, it's a different ball game, and I'm sure some people really take to it and some people don't. Was it something, the culture there and just getting to play at URI for those years, did that really suit you?
Yes, it was interesting because I played all sports. Like I didn't grow up being solely a tennis player.
Right.
So I understood like what it's like to be on a team and have teammates and all that stuff. But that's actually one of the biggest challenges for some tennis players because they grow up and from 7 to say 17, 18, that's all they've done. And honestly, this is funny. A friend of mine who was a coach was like, a lot of especially in the US, a lot of the kids that are drawn to tennis, that's because they didn't want to wait their turn to bat or share a soccer ball. Do you know what I mean?
That's a
And
great
so,
point. Yeah.
so like it's even harder for them to adjust to college tennis and being on a team because college tennis is very unique in that way. You know, like I try to tell everyone who I think is coming from that kind of background, like you need to understand, like there's going to be certain times where you're going to have to do things that you might ordinarily not want to do for the good of the group. Vice versa, like there you might miss out on certain things. Like if we have a match and you have tickets to, Broadway, like you're not going. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like that's an adjustment for some tennis players.
For sure. And now for yourself, you graduate from URI, bachelor's in marketing. Now, but you did play on some professional circuits, Canadian Airlines circuit. Did you kind of have what was your, I guess, aspiration from a tennis professional standpoint? What were your goals coming out of school to think you could kind of do at the next level?
It was pretty simple. I started tennis late. Um, and I wanted to see how good I could get. Like it used to I used to not be able to sleep at night sometimes thinking that I would never find out like what my peak is. Like how good can I be? I never thought like, oh, I'm gonna make a living out of this. I would have liked to. It would have been great. It's incredibly hard, you know, but that was really the main motivation is just how good can I be? How good can I get? You know?
Did you like? I mean, so you go from the kind of, again, kind of the flip side of the question we just talked about, where you're coming from the individual world to the team world. Now you're back into the most kind of cutthroat individual world possible, which is, kind of the mini tour life, and you've got, journeymen and guys that are trying to scrape out a living, guys like yourself who are, again, trying to reach your potential in the sport. And I mean, that can be, for casual tennis fans that see the majors 4 times a year, there's the whole ATP circuit below that. There's the mini tours below that. So, I mean, it can be a tough road to hoe. How did you handle that side of it?
I mean, it was definitely hard. Harder than today, for sure. Like, because I mean, look, I'm not young, so there were no cell phones, there was no internet, there was like a lot of the things that you could do that you would do, you didn't have really. Like there, it was. I was lucky. Like I traveled with players that I trained with. I ran into some players that I played against in college. So there was like it wasn't like I was just, I landed in some country and didn't know anyone. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that part made it easier, but it still could be difficult, right? Like if you don't win your first round, you kind of have a gap in between the next tournament. Um, and it can get a little, I don't want to say boring, but like not exciting maybe, you know? Because the thing in college is you play a lot of matches. Like we were averaging like three, maybe even 4 matches in a week. Um, so yeah, but I
Did
liked it,
you
you know.
did you get kind of that, I don't want to say closure, but what you were looking for out of that experience in terms of getting to see, where you could take it? Do you feel like you were able to answer those questions for yourself?
Not fully, because I had a kind of a chronic injury in my left hand, where like the my pointer finger, that base knuckle, um, I partially tore the ligament. And so I wound up going to a doctor that was just injecting cortisone into it. And it was basically a short-term fix. And every time he injected it, it created a puncture wound. And then I wound up with scar tissue and bone spurs. And like ultimately that was like the end, so to speak. I mean, there were a couple times where I did the rehab and it got better, but it never got good enough to play long enough to sustain anything significant. And that's when I wound up kind of transitioning. I was like a club pro teaching, and I always hit a two-handed backhand. So like with my students, if some of them were decent, they'd hit the ball back, and then I would just keep the racket in my right hand, and I just started playing righty, and I actually got to be pretty decent righty, and I played for a while righty, a little bit of a hybrid. Like I would serve lefty like in a way that wouldn't hurt my hand, and then just play righty.
It's an unusual. I mean, that gives you a little niche from a matchup standpoint. I'm sure that gives you some advantage there. But was coaching always? Did you kind of have in the back of your mind as you're going through? And obviously, it didn't necessarily end on your terms, but you knew at some point, like you said, you're not going to. No one can play professional tennis as a an entire lifetime career. So did you kind of always assume that coaching was next? Did you think that you were gonna get a quote regular job, or was it always tennis as the as kind of that next step for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've never had a quote unquote regular job. Um,
Same. Many of us this is how we end up in college athletics because that just doesn't appeal to us.
it never really appealed to me. I mean, I've always like I always wound up with a coaching situation that I liked. So there was never really a reason to like look. There's one period of time, like the tennis club that I grew up at, like my parents were kind of worried, like, all right, what's this kid gonna do, right? So they kind of hooked me up with some members that knew people in business or whatever. I went on a few interviews, and like even just in the interview process, I could tell, like, yeah, you know what? Like, I'm not gonna like this. It's just not.
How was your first foray as coaching juniors? Right? Is that your first real true coaching experience at the kind of club level?
Yeah, like when I so the club I was at, basically the my coach was the guy who hired me. Like when after my first year at Rhode Island, when I came back, he was like, "Hey, do you want to start teaching?" And because he was booked, like he was on the court like 50 hours a week, he couldn't teach anymore. The other assistants, like they didn't want to do anymore. So he just basically, like when the phone would ring, he'd be like, get it. And so I taught like, I mean, anyone from like 7 to like 90 years old in the beginning.
Then how long into that phase before college? Because you started as a volunteer assistant back at Rhode Island, is that right? Drew, sorry. So at what point then do you kind of shift from the club side to college? I'm imagining there's some period where you're doing both of those in some concert with each other, but how does kind of college coaching re-enter the picture?
Yeah. So I was running a club with a guy named Colin Dibley, who was an amazing player. Like he made the quarters of Wimbledon twice. He made the semis of the Australian Open. I mean, he's quite a bit older, so we're talking like 70s into the early 80s. And he was like the best way to put it is he was the principal, like he had the lease, but he needed someone to run it. And I had been in the area, and he kind of he called me out of the blue one day. And he's from Australia, and there's this guy on the phone with this like cool accent, and he's basically like, "Hey, you know, what do you think?" And I'm like, "All right, I'll come down. We'll meet for coffee." And so I was the general manager. So it was cool because I made my own hours, and we were doing really well. Like he was a big name. Like he was a guy that was on the cover of a tennis magazine for hitting a serve 148 miles an hour with a wood racket. Like
I was gonna say
he was
back
a
in,
ridiculous player. Like
yeah.
even in his 60s, he was still playing on the court, running around, killing all the juniors. Like, I mean, it was great. It was fun working with him, hearing all the stories and everything. And but the way it was set up was like he basically had a lease for the club. He didn't own the land, and we wound up with a horrible landlord who basically like we wound up in litigation, and the legal bills mounted, and he couldn't fund the club anymore basically. And Drew was 10 minutes away, and the coach there was looking for an assistant. So I basically was like, all right, I'll do that. I got to make my own hours, so I was volunteer assistant for a couple of years. And then I spent 1 year at Montclair State, literally 1 year, and then they cut the program in January. Like I started in August.
I was gonna say you're on this string of kind of like tough circumstances that really have nothing to do with you, right? It's like you get into this weird landlords. You have a injury that's beyond your control. You have a bad landlord business situation. The Montclair cuts its program. It's nothing to do with you specifically, but that's a lot of dead ends to have to kind of fight your way through to get to a more normal path.
Yeah, a little bit. But then things changed and got better because the guy that was at Drew, he um he left, and I was like the only person available in such a short period of time. Like he left in August. The AD there knew me, and basically they were like, "Look, you can be the coach on an interim basis, and at the end of the season, if you did a great job, um, we're required to interview a few people, but like the job will be yours. If you're terrible, well, like you're not coming back, and if you did just okay, you can compete for it, in the candidate pool, so to speak." And it was pretty funny too because at the end of the year, like the AD hadn't said anything to me. I'm calling the previous coach, who I'm really good friends with, and he's like, "Just don't say anything. Keep showing up." And it was a pretty good year. Like I inherited a men's team that won the conference. I didn't mess it up. We won the conference. So like things were pretty good. Um, but yeah, that was a
Like
funny
the George
conversation.
Costanza
It was
method.
actually, it
Just
was just like that
keep
basically.
showing
He
up.
was like, "Yeah, just keep showing up. Don't even mention it."
That's great. That's great. Well, I mean, obviously it works out because you spend a decade at Drew, two-time Coach of the Year in the Landmark Conference, USPTA Eastern Division Coach of the Year, ITA Northeast Coach of the Year in 2011. So some really good years at that level. And then, I'm assuming then the opportunity presents itself to make the jump to Division One and Fairleigh Dickinson, and obviously staying local in New Jersey. Was that kind of the calculus for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I've never really left this area. Um, I did leave Drew for like an opportunity, like in just like call it the private sector of tennis. Um, and I did that for like a couple years, and I liked it, but I didn't love it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the FDU opportunity opened up. So the same coach that I in like followed at Drew, he left for FDU. Like the way it worked out was he was at FDU in like the late 90s. Um, he was there two different times, and he wound up in the Hall of Fame. And when he's inducted into the Hall of Fame while he's still coach at Drew, the AD asked him if he would come back for a third time. And he said yes. Of course, they had to do a whole bunch of things, and they did them. And that's so I followed him at Drew, and then there were a couple coaches in between at like FDU, but I followed him to FDU basically. Like I called him up. I said, I miss college coaching. Do you know if you know of anything opening up, let me know. And he was like, FDU's open. The guy quit today. That's what happened. Like it was during the winter break. And he's like, are you interested? I'm like, yeah. He's like, let me call, whoever. And I had a phone call literally the next day. I had an interview a week later. And then February 2016, like I'm at FDU.
That's amazing. I mean, small world. Yeah, everything happens for a reason, and again, another close to a decade there. Obviously, some great success at FDU, and then you come here to Temple. Obviously, at a very, I think, opportune time for this program. What was it? And I know you and I had the chance to sit down. Probably your very first day on the job, if not close to it, when you were introduced. But just to kind of revisit the specifics of Temple and what got you outside the confines of the great state of New Jersey and across here to Philadelphia. What was it about this particular opportunity for you?
Um, like everything about Temple is in a way like just bigger and better. It's just different. It's like the next level is the best way to put it. And it's still in the Northeast, which is where I'm from, and I'm comfortable here. And it was just a really interesting opportunity. And the other thing too is like it's both teams, like which is all I've ever done. So, a lot of coaches don't love that. I like it. And I think I just looking at it from afar, I thought I would be a pretty good fit. So when it opened up, I applied.
Well, as you mentioned, this is one of the things I wanted to get to. In your role as the director of tennis, overseeing both the men's tennis and women's tennis programs, it's not something that happens everywhere. Some programs have it, some don't. Just tell me about that side of it. Obviously, there are, I'm sure, nuances and differences both in terms of the way the sport is played, the, kind of what it takes as a coach to be successful from the kind of off the court and the mental and emotional side. I'm sure it's not just a one-size-fits-all approach. Even in the same gender, what's going to work for your, whatever. One singles player is not going to work for another and vice versa, but I imagine just the kind of spectrum of how you need to be as a coach gets that much wider when you have men and women within your coaching sphere, so to speak. So what aspects of that have you enjoyed over your career, and what has it demanded of you as a coach?
I mean, a lot of attention, a lot of focus. I mean, obviously the recruiting part is a big deal. I mean, like there's a wide range of like call it differences, variables, but like at the end of the day though, like your competitive spirit carries the day for the most part. And like if you can get players that have that, like great things are going to grow out of that. Like I feel like the ability to achieve is just enormous. And so that's really like the focus like every day, trying to get 1% better. Um, and then, you stack it and stack it and you're achieving.
How has it played out? I mean, there's kind of two aspects of it for any sport, right? There's the recruiting profile, who you're looking to bring in, and then there's the development side of it. And obviously, it takes really both sides of it to be a successful coach. And, particularly here, these rosters are small. It's just the nature of the sport in college. And so how have you kind of seen over the 2+ years that you've been here, just your ability to again, look for that kind of talent, develop that kind of talent, and how that's informed kind of the way you've been able to construct the men's and women's rosters here in Philadelphia?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like I think every player that's looking at schools kind of has certain things like that they're thinking about, right? Um, some of them are specific to their sport. Some of them are It could be simple geography. I want to go to a big school. I don't want to go somewhere in the middle of nowhere, stuff like that. Um, so, I look at it like one, you got to cast a wide net, right? The bigger the funnel, the more, the greater the chance that you're going to get the right fit from the beginning, you know? Um, I think that once you start to break tennis down into its components, right? Like you have technical, you have tactical, you have the mental, like there's so many variables. And we work on them all in different ways, and certain people need more focus on certain parts. And I've been doing it long enough to kind of, figure that out. And that's the other thing. I always look at it like it's a never ending process. Like there's really no destination, you know?
Right.
Like you're just constantly like refining and getting better. Like I listened to an interview a while ago with Ivan Lendl, and he was saying how like he would evaluate his game every like 6 months or so. And with video and all that, like he had I guess back then, the luxury to have access to those kind of tools. And he was like, there's like if he didn't progress in that 6 month period, he would not be in the top 10, is basically what he said. Like you always have to be improving in every facet.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think it's just such a different philosophical mindset. You never, yeah, the fact that you never really, if you do arrive, that's fleeting, and you've got to get back and or fight to stay at that mountaintop is a really interesting, just a really interesting approach. It's something, I mean, obviously that we deal with in college because no matter what, you're gonna after 4 or 5 years, that entire cycle turns over, and you're kind of pushing that boulder back up the hill. And I think for folks that don't know, one of the other really interesting things, I'm sure tennis, more than any other Division One sport, I don't have the numbers at my disposal, but I feel pretty confident in saying it's the heaviest international presence of any NCAA sport, and I'm sure also that just makes things interesting from your perspective, from a recruiting perspective. Just that you get to have a really privileged position, which is bringing all of these different cultural backgrounds together. And I think Philadelphia is obviously a great city and a great place to be able to do that. Is that always an aspect of something that you've enjoyed about this role?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite parts. Like having people from all over the world like become a member of your team. It's like it's amazing because all the kids like they visit each other in the summer. Like I've had former players, I see pictures of them like on Facebook and they're at someone's wedding in like India, you know. Um, I think that's what makes college tennis special to a degree, is those bonds that last a lifetime, you know. Um, it's pretty amazing.
All right, so to dig in on, what a match day looks like for you, I think college tennis coaching is one of the really interesting things because I think so much of it happens, kind of it's the tip of the iceberg, right? The 90% below the iceberg, and then you get out there to match day, and again, if you're familiar with the sport, it's chaos in a way that you have, 6 or 7 courts going simultaneously. You've got your 3 doubles courts, and then, that adds up to a point. You've got your singles matches each worth a point, but it's not like you can clone yourself and you're not giving, in terms of a point by point tactical, feedback. You just can't from a physical standpoint. You can't even see necessarily everything that's happening all at once. So how do you, and again, the staff that you have here at Temple, what is your philosophy on match day itself, and kind of how you know when to come over here, know when to give some input, know when to lay back? How does that part of it work for you?
I mean, one is you need awesome staff, which I have. So like I'm very comfortable with like either one of our assistants or the GA like managing a court, you know, like we're all on the same page. And that's super important, right? The other thing is with doubles, like we're kind of covered because like you're allowed 3 coaches, right? Singles, I mean, when you have 6 courts in a row, it's funny, like the layout matters, right? Like
Yeah.
when you have 6 courts in a row, like that's why like the old layout of the courts at Temple, like not only were the courts not great, okay, but the layout wasn't great either because you didn't have line of sight, right? Um, but now that we have this huge scoreboard and we have all the 6 courts in a row, like I'll be able to know what's going on in every match. So I'll know like, okay, fourth singles heading into a tiebreaker, right? So maybe I'm going to go wander down there. All right. Um, but you constantly like look around. It sounds silly, low tech, but you just gotta always be paying attention to what's going on outside of the court that you're on, you know. Um, that's a big part of it.
Yeah, there's something really special about college tennis. And again, I was very privileged to have 10 years down at the University of Georgia and get to see it, at that level there, which is, I got spoiled, that my first 2 years of school were the last two of John Isner and had some really great years down there. But there is something that's really cool about it because there is actually momentum in this sport. And you think that it's kind of six independent inputs and you're just going to it's more than the sum of its parts. You get the yelling, that you can start to feel, the momentum creep across the courts, even if the players aren't exactly aware of what's going on. They hear their teammate. They can kind of feel what's happening in that match. Who just got a big break? Who just won a set? Who's going to a third? There's something really, really cool about it, and I encourage as we're sitting here and getting ready to open the outdoor season for folks to get to come on and check it out that may not be familiar with it, because there really is something I think incredibly unique, incredibly special about it. But since you've mentioned the new facility, I think that's a great place to jump off of as well. Obviously, I'm sure that was in the works at the time. I'm trying to think of the exact timeline of how it all went down. When you interviewed here at Temple, it had not been opened yet, clearly, but was that plan moving down the track at that point?
Yeah, it was under construction. Like
Okay.
when I got here, the field part, like the turf had been removed. There was like blacktop. Um, and so like I would say they were kind of like maybe in the middle part of the construction.
Gotcha. So, and that's obviously part of the appeal, part of the vision that was kind of laid out for you with this program. But now that we did get to have the official opening last spring, getting ready for your, really first full cycle here going into this year, but just what difference has that made in terms of being able to have, this kind of facility and just another step forward for the program?
Yeah, no, it's awesome. And look, the players that were here and played on like the not so good courts, I mean, they're unbelievably happy, right? Actually, some of them didn't play on the old courts because I think the last year they were so bad they were just playing at UPenn, like whether it was indoors or out. They really just didn't use them, you know? So the joy it brings to all the people that were here before is awesome, you know? And to be able to like when you're recruiting to say, hey, we got seven beautiful new courts, check it out, it's nice. It's important.
Yeah, I think of it, for folks that have been at Temple a little longer, you obviously, by virtue of where you are in that footprint, saw the other half of the turf that's still up there, the old Geesey Field. I mean, is like rock hard concrete and a chain link fence, and that's where our field hockey and lacrosse teams played for many years. And now we have this beautiful Temple Sports Complex a couple blocks south. And yeah, I think there's a positive mix of some jealousy and yeah, happy that the new generation of Temple athletes is getting this incredible experience. And so that leaves us in a great point here because we're getting ready to jump into the outdoor season. As you and I are sitting here, we're less than a week away on the men's side and just over a week away on the women's side. And we're hoping that we are done with the snow and everything we had to deal with in the winter, and looking forward to some good spring weather here and get some outdoor tennis. So I guess let's if you want to start on the men's side and then maybe go over to the women's side, just kind of how things are looking for you heading into this season. You've had the fall and the winter, indoor side of the season, the focus on individual results, and now that we get ready for the team championship season here in the spring, I think the most exciting part of the tennis calendar, just kind of how the programs are looking here in 2026.
Yeah. I mean, on the men's side, like we're heading in the right direction. Like we have people coming back from some injuries that are healthier now, and we had like kind of like the flu or some virus kind of run through our team. So we really haven't had a roster that's been like 100% full strength where we had like all our options, but we're pretty close to that now, which is obviously a big positive. Like we only have 10 guys. Like that's the most you're allowed to have. So, you know, availability is important.
Sure.
Um, you know, so and on the women's side, like we're definitely starting to click. Like we opened up with like two road trips against like very top teams that are generally ranked in the country. I mean, I don't think they were at the time because it was so early. Like the rankings weren't out yet, um, but that's just sometimes in the nature of the schedule. You want to play good teams, you're kind of like at the mercy of their schedule. But the last like 3 weeks or so, like our doubles is solid. Like we carry momentum from the doubles into the singles very well. Even if we haven't won the doubles point, like we're playing high quality doubles where there's a good base of confidence. So I like where our teams are at. Like I think it's only going to get better from here for sure.
Well, really looking forward to what's ahead this spring. I mentioned the weather kind of tongue in cheek, but it is, I mean, it is a real hindrance here. You deal with the unpredictability of weather in the Northeast. And I mean, you spent your entire career in the, mid-Atlantic, New England region. Has there, and now competing in the American Conference, it's an uphill battle because you look at the teams in this league where we have a nexus of teams in Texas and Florida and across the Southeast that have an undeniable advantage in terms of weather. Has there ever been a point in your career where you said, you know what, my job would be a little bit easier if I had 12 months of sunshine and warm weather? Maybe I need to go a little bit further south?
That would be too easy.
Spoken like a true Temple owl that we need a challenge.
Right? Yeah. I mean, I feel like every school has its pros and cons. Like, okay, so we're not in the warmest climate, right? And we don't have easily accessible indoor courts. Like we get indoor time, but it's not on campus, right? But like, I mean, I feel like we're in an amazing city, right? Philadelphia is awesome. Um, I don't know. I've never been to Wichita, but I don't think it's probably going to compare so well. That's just my opinion from afar. So pros and cons for every situation.
Well, I really appreciate getting to take the time to get to hear the twists and turns in your journey that have brought you here to Temple. And obviously, I think you can look at the excitement both in terms of the facility, the teams, the results that we're starting to see. I would be remiss not to mention that just this week you were named the Philadelphia Area Tennis District College Coach of the Year. So congratulations to you. I want to say that I can't take any credit for the Owl Pod bump on that. That happened. We had the interview scheduled before this happened, but I'm sure I know it's not the most important thing, but I'm sure it just validates for you and for Temple just the work that you've been able to do here at this program over the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's always nice to win awards for sure. Yeah. Yep.
Well, we know that the big ones are ahead in the American Conference, and we hope beyond at the NCAA level. And Coach, wish you all the best as we're heading into the outdoor season, and looking forward to seeing you out there at this great new facility.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
All right, that's this week's episode of the Owl Pod. I want to thank my guest, Jeff Brandis. A reminder, David Litvin and Amelia Wright are back next week. And if you missed their Wednesday episode with Temple gymnast Nikki Rengifo, make sure to check that out. That'll get you set for tomorrow's Eagle Championships as Temple competes for a conference title up at LIU. I'll be back with an all-new episode next Friday. If you want to support the Owl Pod, please be sure to subscribe, leave a rating. Most of all, please tell your friends. You can listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, anywhere you get your podcasts. And of course, follow us on Instagram at the Owl Podcast. Special thanks to our entire Owl Pod team, our executive producer Dan Lobaz. I'm Kevin Copp. Thank you all so much for listening, and go Owls.